What are we talking about today?
That falls in exactly what we're talking about. How to apply efficiency to your life. Because I like efficiency, right? What I like, honestly, my favorite saying with that is, I'm super efficient because I'm super lazy, right? Lazy, not in the sense of I don't want to do anything, in the sense of I want to find the most efficient way to do something so I can make more time to do the things I like to do.
I want it to be automatic.
Yeah, it needs to be efficient, right? So I believe efficiency is something that people lack, and they may have it in certain aspects of their life, but trying to free roll efficiency into the rest of your life becomes a little bit of it's a weighing system, right?
How much more efficient are you by simply planning?
It depends, right? Because here's the thing is the saying is, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? There's a caveat to that, because sometimes you put such a solid plan in place without realizing that no matter what you plan for, it will fail. Because
don't you think you can plan your non-negotiables?
Again, to a degree, like, yes, you can. You can say, well, I won't do A, B, and C, right? But generally what happens is life is going to throw you into certain situations where you may feel like you don't have a choice, right? Now, Dr. Sean Baker, who's he wrote The Carnivore Diet, right? He was talking about cravings, right? And he made a really good point, and honestly, it kind of highlighted for me. I knew this, but he highlighted it in a very articulate way. And what he was saying is, he says, so if you're on a carnivore diet and I start craving something, he goes, cravings are hormone driven. Right, so there's a spike in your body of certain hormones that'll drive you to crave, because if you're eating consistently, you're not hungry, you're not starving.
Yeah.
But your body may crave something because certain hormones dip, certain blood sugar might dip for a second. Right. And he says what happens is, what do you do when you have a craving? He goes, just wait. He goes, give it 30 minutes. He goes, don't cave into it, because what happens is
that's a good point,
right? Because and honestly, when he said it, I was like, you know what, every time that I waited, it'll come, and then all of a sudden it's gone, right? Like, you if you're on a carnivore diet long enough and you're not adding any carbs into your diet, there come certain points, especially in the world we live, and you'll smell some bread, or you'll walk past something, you'll have the nostalgia feeling of wanting to have something, and then what'll happen is you'll go in, and now what happens is you say it's, I gave into the craving, or I couldn't hold that. Yes, you could. What happened was you lost discipline. You lost discipline, because all you needed to do was wait 10 minutes, right, for that hormone levels to kind of refluctuate where they were. Maybe have a little bit of water, right? Maybe go have a steak, maybe a can of tuna, whatever you eat, right? If that, and then you'll feel better. It's understanding those levels, because I think part of efficiency is we tend to want to fall back, right, into what's easiest.
Yeah.
And efficiency is making short-term sacrifices for long-term gains. Yeah. Right? Because initially when you put in efficiency, it's hard. Because I'm going to be efficient, so I'm going to prep my food on a Sunday, right? I'm going to plan my workouts for the week. I'm going to make sure what I can do. Those are the non-negotiables you're talking about, and those are good. But what's going to happen is, generally, once you have those non-negotiables in and you have an efficiency going, where the dam breaks is not on the efficiencies. It's when something changes in your day-to-day, right? So there's a change.
Well, and my take on that would be, that's the importance of fundamentals. So like habits and fundamentals, and in my opinion, is what really comes into play with efficiency here. Yeah. Like when we really break this down. So a habit, a plan so I would say planning, habits, and fundamentals is what breaks down efficiency.
Yeah.
Okay. So planning would be meal prep on Sunday so that I can properly eat my food through the week.
Yes.
Right. But when that meeting or impromptu situation comes about and I find myself traveling to a meeting on the other side of Tampa, and I'm way late on my meal plan and I didn't have the chance to grab the food because I had to go, whatever dart happened, right?
Yeah.
So now I rely on my fundamentals to know how to properly eat in that situation and what to do about how to eat. So if I'm in the worst case scenario where what restaurant could I go to order off the menu to say, give me some chicken or give me just a steak or some vegetables, right? Like there's those core fundamentals of good decision making that you have to lean on in those when it goes off plan 100%. Situation.
But in that comes, you've got those core fundamentals, and I agree with you. But then what happens is there's two things that I think attribute to gaining the ability to become efficient in things, The one is learning from past experiences, right? So the first time that something happens to me that throws me off my plan, and I'm able to pivot, find a workaround, even if it was difficult, because it will be. Like this is kind of the point I'm going to, is in order to become efficient in something, you have to go through difficulty. You're going to have to go through a learning curve. You're going to have to get education. You're going to have to research. You're going to have to live that research. You're going to have to apply it, and then you're going to have to learn from it. Because it's you're going to apply something, it's not going to work the way you want to, and then you're going to have to pivot, find the best way. And eventually, sometimes it's you do it a whole bunch of times, and eventually it becomes habit.
Absolutely.
Right. And in that particular case, I think a big thing is learning. Right. So if something's happened that's thrown me off, what do I gain from it? Because generally what I find that I used to do or that you would do is when that happens is you get so enraged because you're off plan.
Yeah.
Right. So two scenarios. So something happens. So I follow my plan, but I'm really upset. Like I'm angry. Right. I'm angry. And that anger doesn't help you. Right. It's because what happens is you'll now associate that same feeling the next time it happens, and you're going to get angry again. And then eventually you're going to get so angry then go, this isn't worth it.
Right.
Or what's going to happen is you're going to fall into that line where, okay, so I've had a change in my general day to day. I've had to pivot, and now what happens is because I've had to pivot, I give up and I'll do whatever I need to do for that day. That will happen. Yeah. If that does happen, how do you get back on the horse? How do you get back on the saddle? How do you get back into line? So I think for me, efficiency comes down to consistently researching and being able to upskill yourself. And it's painful to start with. In order to become efficient in anything, you're going to go through a point of pain, because efficiency means multiple things. The first thing is you have to find a algorithm of workflow that works for you. Yeah. Your efficiency won't necessarily work for mine because you live a different life to me. Right. So you've got to be willing to take those knocks of feeling like I'm just not getting there, and consistently going through the process. And this doesn't just apply to eating plans. This applies to everything, right? If you want to become efficient in a job, if you want to become efficient in a task, what you have to do is you first have to lay the task out, and you have to understand the fundamentals. Then you've got to go look at the task, and you've got to say, okay, is there any way that I can make this quicker, better, more efficient, shorter, whichever route you want to take? And then what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to find and research plans to change set targets. Yes. And then you're going to have to readjust. And the first 5 may just not work. Yeah. And then they may not work because you're not an expert in them yet. You don't understand how to do them. You have to learn how to do them. But you have to keep going. So that's what I mean by in the short term, right? By short term, I mean, if a good example for me would be a Microsoft Excel, right? A program that I've had to use in many different aspects. I still use it today in my business, right? It's a pain of a program.
Which program did you
Excel, say? Microsoft Excel, right? It's a pain of a program. You're an expert in Excel as well. But what I figured out is when I started looking at it is I would go on Google rants and I would go through YouTube, and I'd go to people who knew what they were talking about, right? And try and find, how do I do this? How do I do that? Yeah. Because what I can either stick with what they told me, which is the base level, right? And then I'm always there. So base level takes me 5 hours. Or I become an expert on it, and 5 hours becomes 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. In order to make 5 hours into 5 minutes, I have to go through a set system of pain. Right. Pain meaning that I'm going to have to learn, absorb, apply, fail, redo, apply, fail, and redo it until it becomes second nature. Right. It's the same as you become good in jiu-jitsu. Right. As you know, we can ask Robbie Donofrio, and he'll tell you. And I've heard Joe Rogan say this: if you want to become an expert in jiu-jitsu, right, focus on repetition, not rolling and trying to outdo people, because that's one source. Focusing on a move and repeating that move consistently until it becomes such second nature that you never have to think about it. This is the same way that I apply efficiency to every aspect of my life. Yeah. And this goes for relationships. This goes for your day-to-day. This goes for waking up, getting up. If you want to get up at 4 a.m. in the morning and you want to start your day at 4 a.m., but I want 7 hours of sleep. Okay, what does that require? I have to go to bed a certain time. But now what happens is, unless you've winded down, right? Because what happens is, as we go through the day, you build up energy, and then when you start going into your sleep mode, there's a time frame, and everyone's is different, where you have to calm your system down. I think right now, at least what I see on the internet, there's a lot of
a lot of quote people, gurus, whatever you want to say they are, talking about that morning routine and all this stuff that they're doing.
Yeah.
And I see value in it to a certain degree, but these people that are doing like these 2 and 3 hour morning things, or they're doing cold plunge and then sauna and then reading and then writing and then journaling and whatever, they're doing all these crazy things.
I'd love to know what they do for a living, because, you know, for the general guy who's got to get up and get going, you know, he's like, you've got kids. Like,
yeah. Like, I guess my point of that is like, the reason I like what we do and the approaches that we take. And the reason being is like, we talk about like core habits.
Yes.
Okay. Core fundamentals or core habits, because like there's certain things like I do like to read, and the best time for me to read 10 pages is when I wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
But what I'll say is like for the first time in a long while, I've been sleeping well lately.
Yeah.
I've been hitting 8 hours of sleep consistently
and
for a while.
And you're feeling good for it.
And I'm feeling really good from it. So I'm kind of not disrupting that. So in the end, like, am I getting up and doing a quote morning routine? Not really, but like, I don't necessarily want to get up and I don't want to do an ice bath first thing in the morning when I wake up. And does that make me a weaker person because of it? No. Like, I think there's guys out there making a claim that like, hey, the mental toughness and the things that come from all that, that's great. You do you. If that's what works for you, so be it.
Yeah.
And it goes back to like what I'm saying is, some people need to wake up in the morning and they have to have that structure to make it work. But I think what's really important is to being adaptable, because I don't think, like, if you get thrown off your morning routine, are you adaptable? Like, if something, like, if let's say like a sick kid, man, like, I mean, I've dealt with that, or, you know, a business situation appears, like some people will work, you know, they get calls middle of the night or something. If you get thrown off the routine, are you adaptable? Are you able to overcome those things?
But I mean, in the same breath, you got to take a step back, right? So the people who are showing you these super, I'd call them extravagant morning routines, right? Whichever one you look at, and there's a whole bunch. Okay, if you listen to Joe Rogan, and he goes on my good days, right? And he goes on my good days where I don't have a lot to do. Like, generally what I like to do is I like to wake up, I cold plunge, I have my workout, a sauna. So it's no different to us to going to the gym for a 1.5 hours a day, right? Is if that gym was at home and I got benefit out of an ice bath, I could do the ice bath before I start training and go. He's created a lifestyle around him where he has everything for him, but his routine's no different to ours. His application of the routine is slightly different. I don't have the luxury of having that set up at home or at his office, right? That's the two places he has it. But that's okay, right? When I did have that, I used to do those workouts when I stayed in Canada at an amazing home gym, and I used to train at home, and I had a routine that worked out. That's his routine. That works for him.
Well, to me, I think in any situation, we become the product of our environments to a certain degree.
Yes.
But I also think, like, there's a million personalities out there, okay? We're all different human beings. You have to find what resonates with you. So 100%. If a guy that's completely structured and routine, like wakes up at 4 a.m. every day and does the same thing over and over.
But he doesn't. This is the point I was trying to make, is when you listen to Joe Rogan, that's his prime days. I'm just saying, if there's a guy out there that's doing that, and you feel like that makes it work for you. But my point is, there isn't.
You don't think a guy like Jocko's up consistently every day?
What happens is Jocko travels all over the country, right? But here's the thing is, right? Jocko, Joe Rogan, I don't care who we're talking about.
Yeah.
What they're showing you is they're showing you their prime day.
Yeah.
The perfect day when they get to do all these things, right? There's a couple of pro wrestlers who talk about their routine. Okay, so now I know what pro wrestling takes. So these guys are traveling at least 280 days a year.
Always gone.
Right. He's on a plane. He's going from one city to the next city. He's racing.
Right.
So that prime day is when he's at home for the 10, 20 days a year. Okay, so his prime day is only 10, 20 days a year. He's only showing you his prime day. That's not his day-to-day.
Yeah.
If Joe Rogan has to go to a UFC, guaranteed he gets on a plane, he flies. If he's lucky, maybe he gets a workout in, but most likely he's got a shit ton of work to do. If he's prepping for a comedy show, that routine changes. So understand what they're doing is they're showing you their prime day.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right. That's what you're going to look at. So I have certain prime days. My prime days is I'm up at 4 a.m., right? I go and have about 2 pints, about 1.5 liters of water with salt. I have a whole bunch of concoctions. I take my supplement routine. I read some books. I meditate. I ground outside. I then go from there. I get ready. I go to the gym. I do a 45 to 1 hour cardio session, cross training with weight. And then I'll come back. I'll have breakfast. I'll then start my work day. I'll go through a routine. I'll then have meetings. I'll then go have a 12 o'clock workout with you. We hit 1.5 hours at the gym. Right, and then that's my prime days. Those days are not every day.
Right.
Some days are not. Like right now, we're busy moving. Right, so my prime days, I'm lucky. I'm trying to get as much sleep as possible because I know what's coming.
Right.
So those days, those are your prime days, and those are the days that I feel like I get the most benefit out of. But that's not that. This is the what I'm getting down to is from an efficiency standpoint is if I'm going to look at someone like Joe Rogan and go, okay, so I need an ice bath in the morning and I've got to do this. Okay, Joe Rogan has established a very good life for himself. He's the top podcaster in the world. He's a UFC commentator from day one. He's a multi-millionaire. He's a comedian. He's a super successful guy. He's built this life around him. Right. Now, if you're worth $250 million and you have the ability to go and copy his life, good for you. Right. But most of us don't. So what you have to do is you've got to build an efficient life around that works around your lifestyle to get you the goals you want. It's the same argument as Mike Mentzer saying that the most efficient way of doing weight training is going in and doing minimal amounts of sets at the heaviest weight to failure. Okay, that works for Mike Mentzer, but it doesn't work for the next guy because there's many different ways that you can adapt efficiency for you. Yeah, totally. But that's where the difficult part comes in. There's nothing wrong with looking at what other people are doing and adapting it to what works for you. There's nothing wrong with that. But essentially, you have to take it and you have to adapt it to you.
All right.
Once you've adapted that to you and you get over the fact that someone else is doing it, because it's not about them.
Right.
You're just taking nuggets of information and you're saying, how am I going to apply this? And you then apply it in a way that makes your routine efficient.
Yeah.
But in order to do that, you have to be super honest with yourself. You have to forgive yourself for the days that doesn't work out like you want. And then what you have to do is, in the short term, it's a shit ton of work. There's so much work that you have to do.
I think you hit on something that's really, really big in this whole journey of life. Being honest with yourself and then holding yourself accountable. I think that's massive.
Yeah.
And like, I've had conversations with somebody recently about this, and then I dealt with this in my own world. It's easy to pull the dust or the rug over the dust.
Yeah.
It's really easy to do that. And just, I'll take care of it later. But when you get really real, really honest with yourself, and if you really, especially when like a really tough time happens, if you just step back and just get honest, like really evaluate where you're at.
Yes.
That to me is the start to really breaking through.
The answers come really quickly then.
Yeah. Because you have to look at it as you're responsible for everything that happens in your life.
Yes.
You.
Yes.
Nobody else. Literally stand in the mirror, look at it, and say, you are responsible for everything that happens in your life. No one else. It's nobody else's fault.
Yep.
There's nobody else to blame. You did it. You got to where you're at. Take ownership and accountability of that.
Yeah.
And so if you start in that place, even if somebody wrongs you, if you actually step back for a second and evaluate like how that wrongdoing occurred and take ownership and accountability of it, I think it's going to allow you to overcome it.
Yeah, once you take ego out of it and you just then realize that all you really want to do is de-escalate because drama is not worth it. And let's break this down into excuses, right? And there are excuses that people will lay out, right? I can't work out because I have kids, right? And they take up way too much time. I'm too busy at work. I work 12, 14-hour days. Okay. There's always an external reason you can't do something, right? So let's take someone in a job that requires them to be on the road, right? So they go home in the evening, they might have to leave the house at 6 a.m. because they're going to be at a job site at 7 o'clock. And then they jump between job sites and they generally get home at 6 a.m., maybe 7 a.m. in the evening. And they go, okay, I don't have time. Okay. But you're only calculating that you have time outside those points. Right. Then there's questions you have to ask yourself about your workday, right? So one, how efficient are you on your workday? Are you so busy, right? Because I used to apply this when I was in corporate, right? If I'm so busy that through the entire day, I'm so either inefficient or so busy, right, that I can't make time for anything. I just work, right? If you are working a 12-hour day and you are so focused on work and you never get time to take lunch, then there's one of two things wrong. One, either you're super inefficient at what you do, or there's if you work for a company, they haven't hired enough people to do the work.
Agreed.
It's the only two reasons.
That's real. That happens.
That's real, right? And then if you're in that job and you are doing that, you don't find even time to take a lunch break, right? And have time in between to just have a thought. You're in the wrong job. Find something else to do, because they're not treating you right. You're working way too hard for what you get paid for, right? And I don't give a shit what you do. You should be able to have breaks within between that you can reassess, because it's been proven that we're more efficient in blocks.
Yeah.
We're not more. You can put someone in 12 hours. I put someone on a 12-hour shift and I just drive them for 12 hours, right? By hour 3, their efficiency goes from here and it starts dipping down. And unless there's a break for them to take some time out of it, what happens is it just goes down, and then eventually it borderlines at the bottom, and they're shit at what they do. The other side to that tail, right, is if you're inefficient in what you do, right, this is where you have to be honest with yourself. I work really hard. No one's saying you don't. But how much time are you spending doing something that could take less time if you applied certain tools, aspects, training, research, doesn't really matter. Then what happens is, and this one people hated when I used to say it to them, how much time do you spend talking shit? Really talking shit. Like, the first thing that I would do to someone when they said this to me, right, I'd get them, okay, let's match up your whole day. We'll see how much time you actually at office. And this exact scenario was with sales executives that I used to have in a company I worked for. And I said, let's break up your day. And that showed me, okay, I had six meetings today. Great. How long were you there? And we'd track everything they did via their cell phone and their car, right? And go, you had 6 meetings. So you had a 10-hour day. Right? You took an hour's lunch there, so it's a 9-hour day. Out of this 9-hour day, you had 6 meetings. Between driving to the meetings, after we've looked how long the meeting was, the time booked, taking all the notes from the meeting, would go, but you had 6 hours in that day. 6 hours. What did you do with them? You were flipping on your phone, you were talking shit, you walked in the door, and the nice reception at the front door, you spent 45 minutes talking to her, you were talking to your mom on the phone, you talked to your buddy here. You wasted 6 hours. Now, it's a lot easier in the modern world. You want to see how much time you're wasting? Grab your cell phone, go to any one of your social media, and have a look at your time you spent on social media. Right? You are wasting time.
Why do you think people do that? I feel like there's a psychological reason behind that.
I think it's an avoidance mechanism, right? Because again, we've said this. In order to become efficient, there is pain involved. It's easier to make excuses than to make solutions, right? There's always 1,000 excuses for every solution. Yep. So if I want to be different, right? I want to be this person. I want to go train. I want to meditate. I want to do all these nice things, right? These things that I see a motivational video tell me is going to make me a better person. But reality is the motivational video is going to last maybe 30, 40 seconds, and then the reality kicks in that I have to apply this to me. In order to apply this, I have to make short-term sacrifices. Now, I'm saying sacrifice, they're not really sacrifices. What it means is you have to make a change. Yeah. And if you're comfortable in your day-to-day, right? Because, I wake up and I go to Wawa, I buy a pizza, and then I'll have an energy drink, and I do this. You like what you're doing, right? And changing means that you're going to go through pain, and you're essentially trying to avoid the pain that's coming.
Do you think these guys that are claiming that they don't waste any time during the day and they're ultra focused, they're really, really intentional about all their stuff every single day? Do you think that's true, or do you think it's bullshit?
I think that there are certain people in the world that are hyper focused on what they do. A good example would be a guy like Elon Musk, right? The level of work he gets through, right, while still fucking posting on Twitter, while still, helping Doge change the way that they collect money, while running Tesla Motors, while running SpaceX, while running X.com, while running Starlink, you go, well, where does guy have time? However, the guy is on the spectrum for autism, right? He's hyper focused. He doesn't care about money. No matter how much money he has, he does not care about his wealth. What he cares about is results. Right. He is the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. Most of us, right, if we really tracked our time, we waste tons of time, whether it be on social media, whether it be just procrastinating about where we're going. Now, when you've gotten to a certain level of self-acceptance and accountability, You realize that you waste time, and I'll be the first to say there's days where I sit and I'll scroll and I'll waste a bit of time, but in the same breath I also get a lot of shit done.
Yeah.
Because I'm aware of it, and I'm like, oh, I need to put the phone down, I need to go work, right? It doesn't mean you're perfect, but I'm accountable for it, and I'm the only one who takes accountability, as you said. So now in those situations, right, first thing you've got to do is be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
This is the hard part, because in order to be honest with yourself, you have to kind of say, well, I'm not efficient, I'm not as good as I think I am. Right? That's a hard pill to swallow.
Yep.
But it's by swallowing that pill, you're going to give yourself an insight in going, okay, but now I'm opening up the door to see how I could be better and more efficient. And that's going to come with pain. So let's take the easy example. So we've got the person who works 6 to 6. Says they can't work out because if I go work out at 4 a.m. I'm going to be tired the whole day and I can't focus on my job. And if I go after 6 p.m. I'm so tired that I can't really focus on a workout. Great, no arguments. But I will guarantee you, almost every single person who says that, if you break their day open, right, you break their day open, you go, okay, how efficient are you? Where do you actually have gaps in what you're doing, and how can you fill those gaps? And once you start filling those gaps, what I would do, and I did jobs like that. I did jobs where I had to get up at 6 a.m. I had to leave the house. I had to run to sites. What I would do is I would pack my gym bag, right? Because I knew at some point during the day, I'm going to have a block of time. I knew it, right? And then what I'd do is I'd make sure that I knew where the local gyms were. I knew which ones to go to. In this particular case, I was working for a mining company, middle of nowhere, and I knew they had a little shitty gym in there, but it was a gym. And I went to the owner and I said, how much does this cost me? I'm not going to come every day. This much. Great. There you go. Right. And I knew when I had a block of time, right, it takes me 10 minutes to get there. I get there, I do a workout, I get back. Yeah. Right. Had my clothes packed every day. Workout might be... I might get to the job and there's a little bit of block of time and there I go. Or it might be in the afternoon. It doesn't matter. But I made sure that I took accountability for the fact that I knew that there would be blocks of time. And then I try to find efficiencies in how I worked to shorten my work times. Yeah. Right. Because everything we do can be more efficient.
I think back to my situation when I was on the road a lot with my job, like going to see customers and whatnot. Yeah. One of the things I just felt like, so there were days I had to be at my office at 5 a.m. Because of trainings or whatever. And then in those days I never got out earlier. I was there till 6 o'clock at night. So I hated when I had to be there at 5 a.m. But anyway, I'd have to get up at 4 to be there by 5. Yeah. But I would always so a regular office day, I would be there at 7. But even then, I would be like, well, for me to get the workout in, I've got to go at 5. Yeah. I felt like I couldn't break away during the day. That was what I told myself, right? But because of what would happen is I'd take 30-minute lunches a lot of times. Yeah. Because I was, and we were a busy company. Like that company that I worked for, they had wish I could remember the slogan, but basically, they wanted you to handle everything with a sense of urgency, because if you didn't, then the competitor would, right? And everything had to be done at lightning fast pace. And so there was just, their business model was basically push every person to their breaking point, and then you hired, right? Because that's how they made their money. And whatever, they were a good company. I'm not going to knock them. My thing would be, if I evaluated when would I have really worked out, what I should have done during that time. And I'd always feel like I was set up for failure, because I'd say, all right, I'm going to set the alarm. I'm going to get to the gym by 5. But I had young kids too, so I would go to bed and I'd get woken up in the middle of the night. So I was struggling for that 5 a.m. wake up call. I'd be like, God, I need just a little more sleep.
Yeah, because sleep's important.
So I wouldn't, and I was sleeping maybe like 4 or 5 hours a night, it felt like. So I was always a zombie, right? What I should have done was exactly what you just said, was identified, like get a Crunch membership, for example. There's Crunches all over the place. Any local gyms, whatever, like find a way to plan, like whenever I was out, use my lunch break when I was out seeing customers, go hit my 45-minute workout, just do something, something would have worked.
And there's a back into that, right? So let's evaluate where you're working. And this isn't a knock on the companies. Everybody's got a different structure of how they relate out, right? You don't work for the company anymore. Right. Part of the reason is the amount of work you had to do for what you got out of it. So it's not to say that if you are working for a company, and we'll move over to if you're an entrepreneur, right? If you have your own business, but if you are working for a company and their business model is tap blood from a stone out of every person we have here, so we can make as much money as possible without having to pay enough people. At some point, if you do not have, right, because this has been company models in a lot of companies for a long time. The problem with those models is your efficiency. You think you're super efficient because what happens is they watch a clock. The person starts at 8 a.m. and then I watch what they do, and they must be busy the whole time. People will find ways to look busy and not be busy. Right, people will find ways to take a chunk of work and make something that should take them an hour to make it 5 hours because they want that efficiency, and they always realize that if I do it in less time, they're just going to add more work on. Those companies exist. Now, if you work for a company like that, you have to evaluate what you want in life. Is this what I want in my long term? Right, and I'm not saying you go to your boss and you quit your job right there, but what you have to do is you go, am I getting the most out of what I'm doing, right? Because you get paid for what you do.
And I think back to my time, honestly, the hours that I put in was honestly to keep up with people that had been with the company for a long time that I perceived were way better than me, way more efficient than me, and way quicker on their work. So for me, it was like I was constantly trying to keep up with these people because they had been with the company way longer than I had. I came in after military and government service, so I was trying to catch up. Like they already,
which is fair.
Yeah, I always felt like I was playing like keep up with everybody else. So what it would do though, because I wanted to get promoted, is it would force me into these long days and long hours because I did things slower than other people. But I didn't want them to know that I did things slower.
Which is fair. There's also an argument to be made is if I start a new job, and I applied this to every time that I used to go work in corporate and I start a new job, what I do is I'd give myself 3 months. Yeah. In that 3 months, everything else takes a backseat. I'd still have a workout, but I'd have to go out of the range of what my work day is in order to get it, because it'd take me around 3 months to become an expert in what I'm doing. If I'm already an expert, that's the reason to hire me. So I need a 3-month window to learn the requirements, what they want, the emotional targeting of the company, because each company, depending on who runs it, they always talk about a fish either rots from the head down or it becomes the best thing from the head down. So you have to learn the emotional regulation of a company. How does the boss run the company? What is the expectation of employees? Does he watch clocks or does he look at efficiency? Does he look at work output? Who is the person running it? After a 3-month period, I'm either going to be good at what I'm doing and then start finding gaps where I can then start applying my process again, or I'm going to go, this company's not for me because this is not what I really signed up for. Right. And that's a decision you have to make as an individual. When you switch that over to be an entrepreneur, now this is where it becomes a little bit different, because I found with entrepreneurs is we're so overly procrastinating in our business to make more business, because when you start your own business, this is the biggest misconception if you've never owned a business, right? When you own a business, the idea being is from the outside, you're a business owner, everything's so good, you get so much time off. No, it's 24/7.
It never stops.
The difference though is if I'm getting into business to sell this cup, right? That's my job. I'm selling these cups, and I really love making these cups, and I like the design, and I design them, and I create this, right? That is 1% of what I do. The real work comes in is I have to find people who will actually buy this. And I have to find a way to market to them. I have to find referral systems. I have to find deals. Even get in a position
to be able to even just make the cup, sell the cup, prepare all the processes and systems behind that.
Right, because you're now responsible for every single line that comes in. However, what I find with business owners, in the beginning, the same as if you start a new job, yes, there's going to be difficulty, but I find it's very important that when you start, you have to make time for yourself, because businesses and running them can very quickly take everything from you. They will suck your life out of you, right?
That's why, for me, the gym is on my calendar every day. Yeah. It's literally an hour meeting every single day.
I will make time.
And I will tell a customer, if I'm on the phone, like getting ready to walk into the gym, I'll literally say to anybody, I don't care who it is, let my secret out there, but I've got an appointment in 5 minutes. I only have 5 minutes.
And that's it. Make an appointment. That's a client. That's an appointment, because your mental state, your physical state, how you perceive yourself, and all those accountability points you're talking about, having the outlet of being able to work out is going to help you. Right? Keeping your diet at least as clean as you possibly can is going to help you establish your business. Making sure you take time for yourself, right? Because now you're in the position that you can. You don't make the same mistakes that your corporate companies did, where it was like tap blood from a stone. You don't do that. What you do is efficiency comes in chunks, right? It's statistically proven. Human beings are super efficient for 40 minutes. And then what happens is it starts slowly waving over. Some people can push it to 2 hours, but generally after 3 hours, efficiency it flatlines. Right. what happens is we get distracted. We do things. We're telling ourselves we're working, but we're not. We're doing all sorts of other things around us. So what you want to do is...
Do you think we're productive more than an 8-hour day? I don't.
I think we are, but it depends on how you measure the production, right? So let's say we chunk it out. So I start at 7 o'clock. Between 7 to 8:30, I'm checking emails. I'm seeing any new leads that came in, and I'm answering emails, and I'm setting up appointments for today or the week, right? Then what happens is at 8:30, I take a break. I go have breakfast. I maybe go do a little bit of research. I read something that's got nothing to do with what I'm doing. Now what happens is I reset my brain. I reset my body. Now your next chunk after that is maybe 9:30. Now between 9:30 I've got meetings. So I take my first meeting and I run those meetings for the next couple of hours. And then around 11 o'clock I have a meal. I maybe check emails again. 12 o'clock I'm at the gym. Right, I'm there for an hour and a half, an hour physically in the gym and half an hour to get there, get out, get back to work. Now what happens is when I get back, I'm going to have a quick meal. And then I'm going to sit and I'm going to get back into work. Now, what's happened is you've broken up those efficiencies into chunks, because what happens is if you overly focus on one thing consistently, eventually you become blind to it, right? So your efficiency drops. But if you chunk it out and you have those breaks in between, your efficiency does this. So you become more efficient over that period of time. Now, your question was, are you efficient over an 8-hour day or more than that? It depends on how you chunk your day, because as long as you are taking those chunks of breaks in between to reset and rewire your system, right, you'll probably find you'll be more efficient. But realistically, do you know what the average amount is that people work on a day? And what I'm saying is actually work.
6 hours.
Nope.
4.
Nope.
2.
3.
3. I believe it.
Actual work. Actual work.
Well, my question stems from, like, I remember those days where, like, you know, I'd have to be in the office at like 5 a.m. for a training, and then there were days I'd end up being there for 12, 13-hour days. Anything over like that, and I will say one of the things, like when COVID happened, we were online a lot, so we did all these Zoom calls or Microsoft Teams calls, and so like between interviews, conference calls, general meetings, like you name it, like there were days where I would literally be from like 5 in the morning to like 4 in the afternoon of just back-to-back calls, and then I'd have to try to get some work done in the last couple of hours, or I'd come home with work. But beyond, like, over an 8-hour period of time, like, I was just like, I was brain dead at the end of it. I was literally brain dead.
Yeah.
And thinking about in the entrepreneur world, I've kind of, like, I went from being this person that I had to have all my systems perfect and processes perfect, because that's how you made money and that's what you had to do. And it's the world that I came from. Like, they had really good systems and processes. I was a black belt, Six Sigma, so I understood it all, right? To where I had to have those controls, to where I was like, I'm relinquishing control of that because I'm still working through figuring out what my processes and need to actually be, that I can actually be effective on. But I'm not going to kill myself in the hours that I put in, because I have to put myself first. And this is me learning through many lessons, but like putting myself first has been a true game changer.
Yes.
Because now, I don't know, like the world has opened up for me so much more, because of just like prioritizing me first. Yeah. Right. And like anybody that's listening, like, you have to make yourself the priority above your wife, above your kids, because your family, everybody.
If you come first and you put yourself first, and not selfishly, you're putting yourself first so you can be the best for everything else. That includes your business, that includes your family.
And I've said time and again, like, I can't love others effectively if I don't love me.
100%.
And if I don't love me, it's because I didn't prioritize me.
Yes.
If I don't invest in myself and my health, like, you know, Sam and I right now are spending lots of money on our health and well-being. Yeah. And it's important. I mean, I think it's really important for us to invest in ourselves individually as people, because, again, how can I love everyone else effectively? How can I be a good friend, a business partner, whatever, a business owner, a person in my community, if I don't put my best version forward? If you don't take care of yourself. Right.
Where's the longevity?
It's not there.
Yeah, so that efficiency line, when we're applying it to a day-to-day standard, right, is you have to find the mechanisms that, first of all, work for you. Take information from a lot of different places. You have to let go of trying to over-control your day, right? Allow yourself to go with the flow, and while you're going with the flow, to be able to pivot and change certain things so you get the most out of it.
How many people do you know when a problem arises in business, they lose their fucking mind over it?
Yeah, but that's experience, right?
Yeah, but I think it's because I don't know if it's experience so much as control. I think it's when they don't have control, they lose it.
I think partly to that is, when I say experiences, what I've generally found is there's, in taking accountability and in also allowing to let go, right? And there goes under the control that you were talking about now, is there is zero benefit in having a over emotional reaction, right?
Yeah.
To anything.
Yeah.
Right. Especially one where you say freak out. There's no reason to freak out, right?
Yeah.
There is problem. What is problem? What could be the possible solutions? Which ones can I apply? Choose one and apply it. That doesn't mean that the outcomes are always going to be in your favor. Realistically, is if you're dealing with customers, which most of us are, right? What would happen is, if a customer has a problem, sometimes it's either going to be a reasonable or an unreasonable problem.
Right.
It's either going to be solvable by you or unsolvable by you. Simple as that. If I look at the said problem and I take emotion out of it and take ego out of it, and I don't take it personally, because I find a big problem that we have, and I used to say this when I used to run call centers, is the guy on the other side of the phone that's screaming and shouting at you, right? He doesn't know who you are, and he doesn't care. If he's taking his emotions out on you, right? It says more about him than it does about you. Mm-hmm. If you're going to react to those emotions in a negative way, all you're doing is playing into his game.
Yep.
What you want to do is you want to take emotion out of the equation. You want to be 100% professional. Right? Doesn't matter what name he calls you, and there's so many different instances that I can lay this into. What you're trying to figure out is, can I help this customer? What is his problem? Do I have a solution? Can I apply the solution? Right? And that's as simple as it is. Yeah. And then we just move forward. Because if a client is unreasonable and I say, well, I have this solution, he goes, well, screw you, I don't care, I don't want it. No problem. What's the next steps? So client is unreasonable. I can't actually assist him. He doesn't want me to assist him. Right? Would you like a refund? Would you like me to cancel the contract? What would you like me to do? Right? Because you're going to get these clients. This is just part of business. So you have to always look at taking someone on and understanding that the minute you take ego and you stop reacting defensively. Yeah. Right? We spoke about this in relationships. The minute you stop acting defensively and you look at it as a person on the other end. Now, in the same cases, that person might have had a shitty day. Yeah. They might have lost someone in their life. There's so many things that you don't know about.
A lot of variables.
Don't judge someone else, right? Try and be the most professional. Be the better one. Be the better person. Be that person you want that you want to be on the other end when you did that. 9 out of 10 times, the person will change the way they talk to you. They change the reaction because they realize that you're being professional and you're not reacting to them. They might not be getting what they thought they were going to get from the conversation. Yeah. And then what happens is now we can regulate and now we can move forward. That's efficiency. Yeah. Inefficiency is if I deal with a client and the client's upset, and then I think the client's unreasonable, but I don't really probe and I don't act professionally, and I get defensive because he says you didn't do your job. Now what's happening is now you have two really unhappy, egotistical, driven people. Both may be right, both may be wrong, but it doesn't matter right now because emotions are so high that all that's happening is we're just blowing something up. And that goes back to your point. So we blow up these situations and we create drama where it doesn't actually exist.
Yeah, and I think that stems from a place of, my mind goes to some situations that I've witnessed recently with people overreacting, whether it's in the grocery store or pick up like a parking spot. Yeah. To me, and there's a situation I know about that I can't really share details of it out of privacy for that person, but like the example of the person blowing up and losing their cool over something, it screams you've never addressed yourself.
Insecurity.
We can call it insecurity, we can call it trauma, we can call it any of the above, right? Like in going back to like this whole episode and the whole efficiency topic, like
that goes for emotions too.
It's everything.
It's everything.
Like in my world, like once I realized how important it is to like dive into me and peel back the onion on myself, and truly being able to like evaluate me, hold myself accountable. Like I've said this, I'm going to keep saying it, but like holding myself accountable to looking in the mirror and saying like, you're the problem, dude, fix it.
Yes.
Like, so here, I heard somebody say this actually. This is, I think, really relevant. This was in regards to relationships, to where the guy identified that his spouse was where she was because of what he did, okay, and his actions and how he was. And he goes, well, okay, I'm the problem. And he was like, at first, like bummed that, well, I'm the problem. And then he realized, okay, well, if I'm the problem, I'm also the solution.
Yes.
Okay, wait a second. So if I'm the problem, I'm the solution. That means I have control over this.
Yes.
Wait a second. That means I can change this. I have the ability to take control and change the outcome. Sign me up.
Yeah.
And so like that's kind of the whole point
and
here.
That's in everything.
Every situation that you're faced with, if you recognize like, hey, you're the problem, you are the solution though too.
Yeah.
And so if you can make those changes, you put your processes in place, put your efficiencies in place, recognize that you're also the solution
to every problem.
To every problem that you have, you're going to be able to like free yourself from these chains.
And they're all opportunities.
100%.
A nice way to kind of lay this out is road rage is a fascinating thing that happens, right? Average person gets into a car for whatever reason. If someone cuts him off in traffic, he loses his shit. It happens every day, right?
Yeah.
Now, I will speak to people specifically for, I don't do road rage because the other guy might have a gun. Okay, that's not a good reason. Right, so the only reason that you don't get out of your car and try to physically attack someone is because you're worried they're going to shoot you. So you're only worried about self-harm. Instead of going, I should not get upset by this at all, right? Because here's the rule. If I'm on my way to work, right, and I get to a four-way stop, right, and I stop, and as I drive, someone cuts me off, right? There's no damage. My car hasn't been damaged. No one's hurt. Nothing's happened, right? Why am I upset? Am I upset because he cut me off? And is it about them at all? Has it anything to do with that person? Because you have to ask yourself a deeper question. Because when you start doing the self-work, like, dude, I haven't had road rage in years. Because when I did have road rage, it had nothing to do with the people. It had to do with me and everything else around me, right? And you have to ask that question. If you can get so upset about something that didn't harm you, didn't harm anyone else, maybe cost you a couple of seconds, and generally it doesn't cost you any time, right? There's an old saying that like really resonated with me. Okay, so if I'm 5 minutes late for a meeting, okay, they did a test. They took people in peak traffic, right? Let's say peak traffic, Tampa from one side to the other. They told one person, you drive as fast as you possibly can. You don't stop at any. You just go. You within the rules of the road and trying to avoid break some rules when you have to. You go as fast as you possibly can. And then the other person goes, you know what the time difference was?
That's
on
probably
average,
the same, right?
By 33 seconds.
Yeah.
It was less than
I know,
a minute. It was
I've seen stuff like that.
Right. So it's been proven that if you're at the point that you're going to be late, that couple of seconds, now what's the difference? Is if I'm rushing, if I'm breaking rules, if I'm speeding, my propensity to hurt another human being goes through the roof.
My favorite thing that happens to me, I have a heavy foot. Like I just do to a certain degree. I mean, I'm not like bad, but like I grew up near Chicago, so everybody was point A to point B in a hurry.
I don't think everybody in Florida's foot is lead.
Yeah. So, but one of the things I pay attention to is like whenever I get annoyed with a person that's driving slow and I get around them finally and I take off and do my thing, I always pay attention to how fast that car gets up to where I'm at.
Yeah.
Especially like stoplights and things like that. And I justify it in my head too, where I'm like, all right, I made that late. See, they were truly driving slow, so they were going to be stuck behind me or whatever. But like, I pay attention to that because it is entertaining to me. Like, because I agree with what you're saying about the time study. I have also found like when I'm relaxed in a good mood, driving to where I want to go. Yeah. I don't think about the time. I get there way faster than if I'm stressed about getting to where I got to go because I'm late for a meeting or something.
And driving breaks down in two times, right? Because weird enough, for whatever reason, people get super competitive with driving. Like, I'm going to get in front of this car. I'm going to get a lead of this. I'm going to get in the front of this line, right?
So that's today on the way to the gym.
That's one place it happens. The second place that happens is I am late for something. I am behind in my time or my plan or my go. And this goes down to efficiency as well, right? So let's break it down to efficiency. So I've got a meeting that is 10 miles away. It's supposed to take me 20 minutes. There's a little bit of traffic. It's going to take me 25 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. Yeah. Right. So now what's going to happen is we live in a time where when I get in the car and I push that GPS button, because let's be honest, I don't use my GPS because I don't know where I'm going. I'm using it because I want time. How long it's going to take.
Me too. Right? I do that too.
Now what happens is I'm supposed to meet someone at 1 p.m. Because of traffic, it says I'm going to be there 5 minutes past, so 5 minutes late for a meeting. Yeah. Okay. So now what do? It is literally impossible to shave that time off unless the traffic conditions have changed.
You might shave
at most. You shave a minute, maybe.
Yep.
Okay. However, this is an efficiency problem, right? So now I know that regardless of what I'm going to do, I am going to be 5 minutes late for my client.
Yep.
Right. So now, do I rush there? Right? Is my client gonna be so upset because I was 5 minutes late that they'll cancel me? Most likely not. What do? I give my client a call. Go, hey, listen, I'm on the road. There's a little bit of traffic. I'm going to be 5 minutes late, but I'll get there. 9 out of 10 times, the person goes, no problem, just be safe.
Well, I think in Tampa, people recognize that.
Right.
It doesn't matter. Like, anybody that's lived in Tampa for more than a year knows how bad traffic is. And you can plan the best, but if you have an accident,
this is kind of anywhere, right? It doesn't matter if it's Tampa. This could be anywhere in the world, right?
Disagree, yeah.
Because people are aware that situations could change, right? Now, if you had a meeting that was so important that God forbid, it's a life and death thing, maybe you should have planned to leave earlier.
Yeah.
Right? That's on you too.
Well, a hack that I'll share is on my calendar for certain meetings, I put runway time. So I'll do it with clients, but I'll also do it with like meetings that are off site. If I got to be there, let's say it takes me 30 minutes to get wherever I'm going. Yes. I put 30 minutes of travel time ahead of the meeting, 30 minutes at post meeting.
Yes.
If the meeting, let's say it's a phone call meeting, I always put 15 minutes runway time on my calls.
Yeah.
I try to schedule them for 30 minutes, but I make sure there's 15 minutes of runway time just after, so that what I don't like doing is texting somebody in the middle of a call saying, hey, I'm running late to your call.
Yeah.
I just don't, I have a pet peeve about that.
But what have you done? You've taken the process of getting to meetings and you've put an efficiency aspect in that makes you comfortable with the process.
Definitely.
This is the same with everything else.
Yeah.
Right? You have to find the efficiency that works for you. But in order to do, you've gone through different sets, pains, you've missed meetings, you made mistakes that made you go, I need to find a different way of doing this.
Well, I know how I am, right? I actually feel someone who's late to a meeting with me doesn't respect me. Meaning a phone call specifically, because traffic, whatever.
You can make a phone call anywhere.
You could call me.
Yeah.
But if it's a phone call, we arrange a time on our schedule to meet at this specific time on a phone call. And then, like I'll use another one, like where I've done a lot of group trainings where the person who's putting on the training shows up 10 minutes late to the call. That's a pet peeve for me because you don't respect your students' time.
I don't disagree with you at all. I don't disagree with you. I think there is a lot of respect that gets put into meetings. So I generally try that if I've said I'm going to be at a meeting, I'm usually 15 minutes early. Right, because I don't know what's going to happen, and I want to be
technology issues, right? That happens often. So 100%. To me, when you come in, like this is one of the things that happens. A Zoom call or a Teams call, the person shows in, and I've been don't get me wrong, like I have been guilty of being late to my share meetings. Okay, so like we all have done this, but personally, I try to never be late to meetings. I always use my calendar to make sure I'm planning properly, because I just know how it makes me feel when somebody shows up late. It's annoying, right? So if I plan though, and I have systems in place, like for example, technology, you don't know what it's going to do. You might have an issue. So you got to prepare for it, be ready for that issue, plan for the issue, and then it's not an issue,
And that comes with a level of experience, research, apply, failure, apply again, fail, apply, fail, apply, fail. And eventually you'll find a method that works.
I feel like public speaking courses did a good job of teaching to prepare for failure, meaning if you have to give a presentation, and let's say you and I have done plenty of business presentations, and you show up to your meeting and then you think they're set up as one way and they go, hey, change the conference rooms or something, and now you're fucked because it's, you can't use a PowerPoint anymore, or you got to do something different, so you weren't ready for that. So the whole idea is by showing up a little early, you can plan for your situation and be prepared a little bit better.
And this is the thing is, in efficiency, preparation is key, right? Being prepped for and not being prepped for the presentation. Because here's the thing is, right? If I've got a PowerPoint and I've prepared myself for it, and let's say this is very important, I've got to do a presentation for a group of board of directors. It's a big deal. It's a lot of money involved, and it's important to me, right? But I say I don't have time, and I spend 5 minutes putting a presentation together, and then have no idea what it says, and I'll just read it on the day. you have no respect for yourself, first of all, and you have no respect for what you're actually going to present, because you need to be prepared, as you said, for every eventuality.
Yeah, I would call it either respect for yourself or it's like actually caring about what you do.
And the other thing is, if it's important and you don't take that time, then you don't respect what you do, and it's not important to you.
Yeah.
And then you have to reassess what your actual goal sets are in life.
Definitely.
So that you can apply efficiencies that actually work for you, right?
Definitely.
Because you have to make time for so many different things. You have to make time to work out. You have to make time to eat. You have to make time for your family. You have to make time for your spouse, your girlfriend. You have to make time to make sure you get the workouts. You have to, it's always, it's this measuring, it's this balancing act consistently, right? Now, if you don't get emotionally attached to outcomes, right? Because this is the next part of efficiency. I find efficiency is really good when I don't get emotionally attached to the outcome.
Yeah.
Right? Because what happens is we're buying a house, right? So we're so emotionally attached to the fact that the house comes through that if it doesn't come through, all hell breaks loose and the world's ending. It's not ending. It's just something fell through. But if I became so emotionally attached to the outcome, right, and something goes wrong, that process of it going wrong
clouds your ability
it clouds your ability to kind of reassess and take the next step. So you always need to affirm yourself. Part of efficiency is always assuming that everything you think can go wrong may go wrong.
Right.
May, not will. There's a difference, because if you think it will go wrong, you're going to you're going to be so anxious you're never going to get anything done. Right?
Yeah.
May. I'm prepared and know that if it goes wrong, I am skilled, experienced, researched. I have every ability to be able to pivot to change the outcome.
Right.
That's part of efficiency. And in order to do that, I have to go through a level of pain of making changes in my day-to-day. And some of the changes are, as you said, it's asking these fundamental questions of who I am, what I do, am I good at what I do? We all think we're great at what we do. It's human nature, right? If we didn't do that, we should, right? However, you can always change something to be more efficient. Also, you don't have to be the best at everything, right? There's also there's an OCD point to this as well, right? Is women tend to have this way worse than men, right? Call it perfectionism, right? This must be perfect or I can't end up. No, it just has to be within the realm of good enough for the person you're giving it to, within a standard, right? Because if you're always aiming for perfection, you will never get an outcome.
I can't remember the statement that I don't know, boss used to say to me, like, don't let perfect be the enemy of good or something like that. I can't remember how that goes.
Because you may have something good, and I find this generally a lot when I build websites, right? Is what will happen is I'll build a website for someone. Now, here's the thing is websites are generally never done because they're a living organism. They're always going to adapt with your business, right? Now, what happens is when you do websites for certain people, they're so overcompensating. It has to be perfect. There's no such thing. Yeah, it goes down, and then what? And the reason they have the perfection is because there's an emotional attachment to it. There's an outcome attachment. Once you let that go, and you go, okay, what is the purpose of said website? Said website is meant to showcase my business, allow clients to see what I do, contact me, get leads. That's all it's for. There's nothing else, right? Am I showcasing it? Is it professional? Does it run a thought? Regardless of what anyone thinks, is most things in life are a template.
Yeah, it's always a work in progress.
There's always a work in progress, but there's templates for everything. All you want to do is you want to take the templates that work the best, replicate them, and put your essence into it. Yeah. That's all it is.
I think in general, I don't know, maybe this is kind of my final thoughts on this subject, but if you're always in pursuit of being great, you're never going to reach greatness, but you can come really close, in my opinion. But if you're always in pursuit of it and you're willing to adjust and become more and more efficient on everything you're doing, and then you hit that, quote, glass ceiling, and then you bust through it and you start the process again. Yeah. To me, like that's this journey called life. It applies to fitness. It applies to business. It applies to relationships. It applies to everything. Everything that you do. Being efficient means I'm truly in pursuit of being better. Yes. A better version of myself, constantly building the better version of myself. And by putting the right efficiencies in place, I can do that. Yes. That's my thoughts. That's kind of my thoughts of how to wrap that one up.
And I think you got it in. For me is I'll wrap this up with, in order to find efficiency, you have to be willing to get out of your comfort zone. change things around and be uncomfortable for a short span of time. If you are looking for long-term gains, you have to take short-term pain in order to get the gains. And by short-term, it could be a day, a month, a year. It takes 10,000 hours to become an expert in something. Right. That's everything. Now, if you've put some hours in, that time can shorten, but it takes 10,000 hours. Be willing to put the time in.
Yeah.
Take the sacrifice, because I promise you, short-term pain for long-term gains.
Yeah.
That's what we want. That's efficiency.
That's good.
Then leave it right there.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.